most common question I get surrounding food plots, as you might imagine, is what should I plant? And that's a loaded question, and there's lots of considerations. The first thing you want to consider is when and why are you needing increased forage from a food plot? Are you trying to provide increased forage during the growing season, or are you trying to plant something that is more attractive during the hunting season? There are both cool season and warm season forages that you can plant. Cool season forages typically produce the majority of their growth during the cooler months of the year, whereas warm season plants produce the majority of their growth, and virtually all of it, during the warm months of the year. And so warm season plantings such as soybeans, iron clay cowpeas, American joint vetch, they are planted in the spring or early summer. They grow through the summer, provide a lot of tonnage and very high quality forage during that time when deer are growing, and they will die in late summer, or some may persist into fall when it frosts. Warm season plantings can be very important, especially for the period of June through September. And that's a critical period when you're thinking about antler growth and lactation for does and fawn development. And so, especially if you're just getting started and you're thinking about warm season food plots, although there's lots of things that you could plant, the basics are soybeans, iron clay cowpeas, American joint vetch, and it's hard to go wrong with any of those. They provide excellent nutrition, and deer highly select all three of those. Of the cool season plots, there are perennial plantings as well as annual plantings. Perennial plantings are very popular, and most perennial plantings include ladino or some other type of white clover, red clover, chicory, and alfalfa. Now, red clover actually is a biennial in that it will germinate, grow through the first year, and then flower and die in the second year, whereas the perennial plantings, they may persist for several years. They peak in their growth and yield during the cooler months of the year, but they are largely dormant during hot spells during late summertime, as well as really cold periods during midwinter, which can be a real consideration whether you're up north and you're wanting a cool season plot, or if you're down south and wanting a cool season plot. So what that means is perennial plantings actually produce the majority of their forage from May through early August in the northern latitudes and are dormant during the wintertime, whereas in the south, perennial forages may produce, of course, through the fall, even a little bit through the winter, according to your latitude, and then peak in production in spring and early summer. So their timing of production is different according to where you are, and that's a critical consideration when you're thinking about what you want to plant. Now, there's also lots of annual cool season plants, and these, of course, germinate, grow, flower, and die, so they must be replanted each year unless you plant species that reseed themselves. And so the most popular cool season clovers would be clovers such as crimson, arrowleaf, berseem, and balança. Cool season grains, especially wheat and oats, are very popular. And of course there's brassicas, including forage rapes and kales, and also there are radishes, especially the daikon radish, as well as different varieties of turnips that are very popular. But keep in mind, these all need to be replanted each year unless you're planting a species that reseeds itself very well. And the best ones of those include crimson and arrowleaf clover. And you can plant crimson and arrowleaf clover as far north as southern Pennsylvania, southern Michigan, but above that latitude, they're probably going to die in the winter, so they would be poor choices. One of the highlights of the annual cool season forages versus the perennial forages is that the annual cool season forages are planted in late summer, early fall, and they continue to be green and growing throughout the winter. Whereas the perennial forages at most latitudes are going to be dormant during the wintertime and not feed nearly as many deer. So think about whether you want a perennial cool season forage, an annual cool season forage, or a warm season forage. All of the warm season forages really that are considered for deer are annuals. The one exception, especially in the deep south, would be perennial peanut. But other than that, with regard to warm season forages, you're thinking about annuals that would be planted in spring, early summer, and then grow through the summer until they mature and die, or until the frost gets them in fall. Good examples of warm season annuals, of course, include soybeans, iron clay cowpeas and other varieties of cowpeas, and American joint vetch. There are others, but if you want to keep it kind of simple, you won't go wrong with any of those. Of course, soybeans can be overgrazed, especially if there's too many deer on the property or the plot is too small. The same thing is true with cowpeas. However, they withstand grazing pressure a little better and typically are not hit as early after planting as soybeans are. And then sometimes we might throw in American joint vetch as a buffer against overgrazing of the soybeans or cowpeas, and that fills in the gaps where the soybeans or cowpeas might be grazed out. The joint vetch does very well with regard to withstanding high grazing pressure. It's an excellent forage, highly selected, high in nutritional quality. So there's all kinds of things that you can plant in your food plot. But it's critical that you know the difference between warm season annuals, cool season annuals, and cool season perennials, such that you are matching the planting with your objectives and getting what you hope to out of your food plots.